Welcome back. We're here on our fifth episode of The Plastic Cup. And you guys are in for a treat. I have with me my friend Sarah Myers. Some of you may have met her and some of you may have not yet. So this is going to be a great interview for them to get to know you. You see her kind of hit or miss because she is a nurse practitioner. Can you say your title? I'm going to mess it up.
I'm a neonatal nurse practitioner. So I work with sick infants, premature infants, but also big babies. Big babies get sick too.
So very important person.
All kinds of new babies. Once you've been home, I'm good. You don't ever see me again.
So she's at church when she's not in the call room or sleeping or working and saving lives. Just normal everyday stuff. So, but she has a son.
Yes.
And you want to
Yes,
tell us about him?
We have one little boy. His name is Jake, and he will be 5 in August, and he is just the light of my life. I always tell new moms, welcome to the most exhausting, rewarding job that never ends, and that's exactly what it is. And he teaches me, I think, probably more about myself than I actually teach him. That's okay. I'm not a teacher.
He is really adorable. I think he looks like a cherub with that blonde hair.
He does. He's a lot of fun. Typically, you can see him after church running through here, and I'm usually not far behind, chasing him, telling him to stop. So
I like seeing him with tell him about your 2 big dogs.
And we have 2 large dogs, Daisy and Toby, that keep us entertained. So if you're ever bored and you need just some excitement, there's a place called My House that there's always noise and excitement, just lots to go around.
So if you ever get to meet and talk with Sarah, actually I'm going to go ahead and share this. I hope it doesn't embarrass you. But someone who is kind of fairly new to the church, your name came up in conversation, and she described Sarah, as she's like sunshine walking into a room. And I had never really thought it just like that, but I thought that is the perfect way to describe Sarah. On multiple occasions in my life, she has been sunshine walking into a dark place. And she comes with this unassuming, helpful hand, and she kind of has this, and I don't know if it's the nurse in you or just how God has built you, you have this innate ability to hone in on, this is the need, and I'm not going to even offer, can I help? I'm going to do this. And so she has this, I think, God-given ability to do that. And many of you out there may have experienced the receiving end of that part of her, but I would agree that she is sunshine walking into a room. Another thing I notice about her is if you've ever talked with her on any deep level, you walk away, and I felt this, you feel better about yourself when you walk away. You feel built up and more energized, and you kind of walk away not knowing how that happened, but as you think back to the conversation, again, I think God has given her a special gift in doing that, and I feel like she empowers women in particular around her. So if you haven't had the chance to meet her, she's your girl. If you're feeling down, go check in with Sarah. She will help you out. But I was thinking about, we were talking about, I've met you because I think you come to the church a couple times through, Mike and Dina. Dina is my aunt.
Yes.
But you guys look like sisters, and
we do. We're actually we're quite close in age too. So our moms are my mom and Dina are sisters, but they're several years apart, and then Dina and I are the exact same years apart. So. But I grew up going to visit Dina when they were in Illinois, and then when they were in New Hampshire. So I've always considered Dina sort of like a sister.
Yeah, and you're close with her kids.
Yes.
Kind of like siblings.
Yes, very much so, yes.
That's good. So I had met her on those occasions, but I feel like the first time I really got to meet you and kind of see you in your element was they had moved into this amazing house in Spring Hill, and we were so thankful because I think the whole church was praying that you guys, all those little adjustments could be made so that you guys could be here. You moved from Chattanooga, right?
Yes.
And so that's how I first met you.
You showed up with your bleach and your sponges and scrubbed my baseboards.
And
from top, it was like, thank you. I don't even know you.
It was fun.
Just scrubbed my baseboards.
It was fun.
So thank you. I owe you forever.
Well, it sounds sacrificial, but I have 4 small children, and sometimes when Dan is willing to watch those wonderful angelic children, and I can go scrub a baseboard, that's actually a little easier.
A little therapeutic.
So I would like to think it's sacrificial, but I'm not sure.
It's okay.
So maybe I was getting a vacation. But anyway, I have gotten to know her on multiple occasions. We've been able to talk a little deeper and get to know one another, and I think you guys are in for a treat. She has lots of good things to share. But we're going to start out with your favorite cup. So I'll share this. Actually, kind of cool. My last episode, someone in the church had given me that cup, and I thought this actually I got from Amber Patterson. I don't know if you're listening, but I went back to school this last January, and her and I have talked, and she's amazing. We're going to miss her so much when she leaves, but she helps out when she's the children's director at the time right now, and we had talked, and I kind of shared with her some of the fears I have about just adding this thing on, and so I got this cup. It says, "I can do all things through Him who gives me strength," and a wonderful card and a Post-it note that I actually keep in my planner, because it kind of encourages me along the way. So this means a lot to me. So, and again, another lady in our CBC church, so I'm just so thankful. And can you tell me a little bit about your cup?
So this little cup, obviously, it has the state of Tennessee on it, and then it says Chattanooga. And a little story behind that, we moved here about a year and a half ago, I guess, yeah, from Chattanooga. We had been living there for about 5 years, and I was working, and there were some structural changes that went through with the company that I work for. They contract out employees to different hospitals, and so there was some business meeting medical things that didn't work out, and so our entire group basically didn't have jobs, and they had non-competes, and so we weren't able to stay. There's a lot of nurse practitioners and physicians that were out of a job. So that was really hard because the practice had been there for 30 years, and so it was sort of like going through a divorce, honestly. And I had grown very close with the friends I had in Chattanooga with that group, just not only just what we do every day as our career, but also, just living life, going through, family losses together, and cancer and miscarriages and new babies and deaths and divorces and life. And so when I left, of course, we were all giving each other gifts and all of these things, but one of the nurses actually gave me this cup that I think her sister was working on some pottery and kind of experimenting with some stuff. And so it's one of my favorite cups because of not so much the cup itself, but it says Tennessee and Chattanooga, but who it's from. And it's such a big part of my life. So
I love that about cups. They're fun.
Yeah, love that. The memories associated with them are the best.
I don't know if it changes the taste of what's inside it, but it feels like it should.
It should.
So what I realized is we didn't even talk about Trey.
Right, so my better half.
Yeah, can you kind of share about Trey?
Yes, so Trey is my husband. He's my better half. That's what I call him. You also might hear me call him my other grown child. But he is this wonderful, precious man that God has given me, and he is a wonderful husband and a wonderful father to our son. We have been married, it'll be 11 years this November. We had a quick dating relationship. We met because he lived across the street from me in Memphis. We were both born and raised in Memphis, and so essentially he was my across the street neighbor, and we kind of just met. One day I needed an egg, and I called him up, and he answered the phone, and I asked to borrow an egg, and he didn't have an egg. He wasn't home, but we got to talking. That just sort of opened a door of talking. And texting at the time had just gotten sort of big. That dates us a little bit, but I mean, you still had text message plans where you had to watch your data. Mm-hmm. And so we would start talking. And then at the time I was training for a half marathon here in Nashville, and got attacked by one of our neighbor's dogs. And he said, "You don't need to go run by yourself. I will run with you for protection." And I was like, okay. And I was actually dating someone else at the time. And so we went running, completely platonic. But he happened to go with me on one of my long run days, and it was 8 miles. And if you know my husband, he is not a runner at all. You don't look at him and think you're a runner. You just don't. And so but he did it. He ran the full 8 miles with me. And
when he tells the story, it's so funny. He was saying how he's like, she would check, look back at me, and I'd be like, yeah, I'm good. But then he's like, as soon as she turned her head, I was dying back there.
Yeah, his lips were blue for sure, a little bit blue. But we just hit it off. We had kind of similar backgrounds, and within 4 months we were engaged, and within 4 months we were married, and everybody thought that it was, oh, she's, there's something else going on. And no, when you know. And so we were in our mid-20s, but we've kind of grown up together. We've gone through some really, really difficult life things together. But it's just, every experience, every year is just more assurance from the Lord that God has put us together for a reason. And He has blessed our lives just immensely through good things, but mostly through hard things. So, but he's a great guy. It's lots of fun.
He's got a wonderful sense of humor, and he's fun to hang out with. If you guys don't know him, and I love watching their family unit together. It's the best. So if you haven't been able to spend time with them that way, try it sometime. You will not be disappointed. So like you and Trey, like who's the morning person and who's the night person and who's the introvert and the extrovert? And
I think we're both fairly extroverted in different ways. I tend to be more reserved until I get into my element, and then I get to going, and sometimes I get to going too much, and I lack my filter occasionally. And I consider that an occupational hazard. Just from being a nurse, we're all a little odd. But he's definitely probably more extroverted than me. He is definitely a morning person. He wakes up with a song in his heart, and sometimes I wish he wouldn't, but he does, and that's fine. Sometimes it's just fine. But I'm sort of an all-day person. It just depends on the day. At work, I have to get up at all hours of the night sometimes and answer calls or go to deliveries, and so I just sleep when I sleep, and I can coffee up. Mm-hmm. But historically, I'm more of a day and afternoon person, a little bit more of a night owl.
Okay. We talked a little bit about, you kind of went into, with you and Trey, going through some hard things, and I know you shared some things with me. Can you kind of give your testimony just about your life in general, about those things and what you'd like to share and how you came to know Christ through that?
So I was born into a divorced family, was the only child, and my mom was a single mom, but I grew up next to my grandparents who were very influential in my life. I went to a Christian school for elementary school, and then middle school and high school was in a public school in Memphis. I was saved when I was 6 years old at Bethel Baptist Church in Schaumburg. At a VBS that I had gone to with Mike and Dina. Mike and Dina have definitely been a very strong influence, a very consistent, steady force in my life, encouraging me and pushing me to strengthen my relationship with the Lord, with others, do the right thing. I am who I am today because of them, for sure. And in high school, I was involved with the church and went on missions trips and did all of the right things. But I always have struggled with sort of depression and anxiety, even when I was a little girl. And I don't know if that's just being from a broken home. I think there's probably a genetic component that plays into that. There's a lot of things, but I've always struggled with mental health. I graduated from high school and went to college in UT Knoxville. Went to nursing school there, had a full ride, so I, couldn't go up there and play around. I had I was on an agenda. Got my nursing degree there, met some really great friends, was involved with some campus ministries there, but also at the same time was just sort of trying to find myself. Did I feel called to missions? I've always loved missions. I spent the summer in Africa between my junior and senior year, but then decided that I really just wanted to be a nurse in a pediatric hospital, and so I went home. During that time, there was a lot of things that were going on in my personal family. My mom's other sister had committed suicide, and that had really caused a lot of just heartache and despair within our family. At the same time, my father and I had just devoted myself to not ever talking to him again, as soon as I turned 18. He and his wife had another child, my brother Sam, who's now 19, and that was just another picture of God's redeeming love, because God used this precious baby to redeem a relationship with me and my dad. So there were a lot of relationship changes, a lot of family dynamic changes during the time I was in college and after graduating and moving back. I was also dating a guy who I loved with all of my heart. I was convinced we were going to get married. This was it. And it didn't work out. His mother ended up passing away while we were dating, and she and I were very close. And so in a short amount of time, from the time I was 20 until I was, I guess, 25, there literally was a family member that died every year around Christmas. My aunt, my grandmother, I had a cousin that died, my boyfriend's mom, some friends, and so there was a lot of loss and a lot of grief. And I was so consumed with just making sure everybody else was okay and showing up to work and doing the right thing that I really neglected taking care of myself. That was just a concept that was sort of foreign to me. My mother was very similar. She always was doing other things, and she was not that great at self-care either. So it wasn't ever taught that I needed to fill up my cup if it was empty, or recognize when my cup was empty. And I found myself when I was 24 just in a very, very dark depression. A lot of my friends were getting married. I wasn't married. It was on again, off again. I was living by myself, and I just felt like no matter how hard I tried, I was never going to measure up. It was just not going to measure up. And so this depression really opened a door, I think, for Satan to come in and just really train my thoughts with a lot of negative self-talk, and just continued down this dark, depressed road, and ended up having some time where I was very suicidal. I did have a suicide attempt. Praise the Lord, it was not successful, but found myself in several months of an intensive outpatient program, and learned some really great psychological coping mechanisms, but I also learned a lot about myself spiritually. And it was just sort of one of the many to come instances where I would feel God just reaching down and picking me up. I was reading a lot at that time too, and Corrie ten Boom is one of my favorite historical figures, one of my favorite women in Christian history and just in history in general. And I was reading one of her books, and she said, "There is no pit so deep that he is not deeper still." And that just resonated with me, and it still does, that there's no pit so deep that he is not deeper still. So got myself back on track. Big advocate for mental health, by the way. And then met Trey, and we were doing great. We got married, life was good. We got a dog. We did all the things you do when you're married, but you don't have kids yet, and all the things you do, like, oh, we have a dog. It's not time for kids yet. You're like, when are you going to have babies? And then went back to graduate school, and I was working my master's, working full time. We were trying to figure out this being married thing. It was like the terrible twos. Like that second year hits, and you're going, I did not sign up for this. Like he is just, this is supposed to be great. Yeah. But we grew up together and learned together, and then his father passed away very suddenly around Christmas of 2012, and he also had committed suicide, and I was the one that actually found him, and so that was extremely traumatic, because I had been through suicides before, and now I have, it was just kind of all the triggers came back. And so trying to finish school, trying to figure out where am I gonna work? We're gonna move from Memphis to Chattanooga, but then also navigating this phase in life where your spouse's parent dies, and it's not like you got to say goodbye or you got closure. It was a traumatic death. And so we went to counseling and worked through some things, and God was able to sort of use some experiences I had had in my life with other family members and my experience with suicide to just sort of prepare my heart and help me to sort of love on my husband and support him during this time where, I mean, how do you know what to do or say? Like, you just don't, you know, and that's okay. So we moved to Chattanooga in 2014, and I started working as a nurse practitioner in the NICU. And at that point in time, we had been married for 5 years, and we had been trying to have a baby, and it just wasn't working out like you think it's going to. And so ended up going through some fertility things, and ended up going through IVF. So that was, you know, thousands of dollars and lots of shots and months of medical appointments and disappointments and all of these things. And it really was taxing on our marriage, because this is supposed to be something that you can make babies, and it's fun to make babies, and it's fun to have a family, and it was not fun at all. And so that was hard for us. That was a very hard time. But we were blessed with Jake, and he is just the best thing that has ever happened to us. And we love him oh so dearly. So kind of we're just going through the motions of life and working and raising a toddler and all of these things. And, you know, then decided, you know, we've got one more embryo left in the freezer. Let's pop it in the oven and see if it cooks, you know. And so we got pregnant February of 2018, and then we lost the baby about a month and a half later. And it just had never really, it developed, and then it just kind of stopped. And so that was really rough, because I had taken care of babies who had passed away. I have taken care of moms who have lost children, but I didn't have that loss myself. And so that was awful. But my friends in Chattanooga, the women I worked with, were just precious, wrapped their arms around me, and just loved on me and taught me, you know, what you do when your friend is hurting. How do you love your friend in a godly way? And that's what these women did. And so then a few months later, found out that we were going to have to move because the hospital was not renewing the contract. So within a 10-month period, we had a miscarriage, I lost my job, and we moved to a new city. And those are all very, very stressful things to deal with individually. And then you pack it in there in a 10-month period. And it was, 2020 is not looking great. 2018 wasn't great for us either. So, ended up, back into counseling again, trying to get our marriage back on track. There was a lot of anger, there was a lot of resentment, just trying to figure out how do we navigate this. These circumstances are so out of our control. And I think that was the biggest thing, was just, I'm an ICU nurse. I like control. I like order. I like my things like that. And, I would think to myself, okay, God, I get that you've been running the world for, ever. But can I make a suggestion? Like, can I make a recommendation? This isn't going well. But, the Lord He really used friendship. He used other people to minister to me. I was just not used to having people minister to me. And He used a lot of music. And just let me sort of come into this place where I needed to be just at the bottom of the pit, raw and completely dependent on Him. And that's not a fun place to be, but coming out of it over and over again, it's like He loves me that much that He's gonna come and get me. He's gonna rescue me from the enemy. He's gonna make sure I'm okay. He loves me that much that He's gonna leave the 99. Like, I'm just this one stupid sheep. He's gonna find me. And so moved here and started coming to Community Baptist, and Trey and I just kind of slowly eased in. I think we were very wary of, I don't say wary, but just cautious, because we were related to, Pastor Mike and Dina, but we wanted to make sure that this was our church too, and that we had a role in this church, not aside from them, but just that we were our own individual family unit in this church. And it has been wonderful. Trey has met some wonderful men who have been very influential in his life. I have met some wonderful, wonderful women who have helped me through all kinds of things, and who I've been able to minister to as well. So it's been good. There's definitely been some times where the depression wants to sneak back in, or the anxiety wants to sneak back in, but God's hand is on it, and He just, not today, devil.
So all these experiences that you've had and all the things that you've been through a lot of loss and a lot of disappointment and things like that. What would you say, like, to people who are maybe starting out experiencing these things, whatever they might be, hardships, trials? Like, what is a message that you'd like to share with them? Something that you've learned or that you are learning, looking back, something that you can pinpoint that was crucial, that was important, or maybe sharing too, like how we can best. You talked about the Chattanooga women. They taught you how to love best during those times. Is there anything you can share that, to encourage us? These are some helpful things.
Yeah, I think that, I went to a counselor when I was in college, that she told me nothing is wasted. And in fact, I had a counseling appointment this morning, and we were talking about it I was talking about it with my counselor this morning, how nothing is wasted. I don't like how things have happened in my life. I get angry, I get frustrated, I get mad. I have no problem telling God my feelings because He already knows them and He's big enough. But nothing is wasted. And to further that, He redeems it. Going through the depression and the anxiety, it's awful going through it. It's awful carrying that every day, having that with me every day. But at the same time, I'm able to relate to so many other women who have that, who don't understand what's happening, who are like, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. I'm like, no, you're just anxious. I get you. I understand that. And being able to meet them and understand, sort of what their struggles are, what's going on in their heads. With the infertility, no one talks about miscarriage or infertility, and those are big things. And so being able to use our story to just encourage others and love on them and just say, I don't know how to fix it, I can't make it right, but I can just love you while you hurt. And I'm happy to just love you while you hurt, and that's it. And so that, just allowing God, just using all of these situations that are really, really just not great situations. It's very devastating, sad situations, and still redeeming it, still allowing His love to shine through, So,
even how, we were opening, and I was sharing how someone who's pretty new to the church and to the people here, very early on, didn't know you that well, but was able to say that she described you as sunshine walking this room. And in my experience, over and over in the years, the people who kind of can do that for others, can kind of share and bring joy, a lot of times are the people that have actually gone through some pretty deep waters, which seems not possible. How can, you, and I think it's because I think they understand God in a way that if everything's going perfect, let's face it, we don't like to turn to Him. We don't like to ask Him for things. We just go on our merry little way, and oh yeah, He's there, good. But I think when you've had to walk in those dark and lonely and disappointing and even angry moments with God, and you've decided to stick with Him, even though you don't understand, there is something that God does in your soul, in your heart, and it creates an understanding of being able to lean into people's hardness and their vulnerability. If you've not walked through that, it's uncomfortable. It's extremely uncomfortable. But I think that through your experiences, God's given you that ability to lean into people a little bit and not be afraid of it. And I think that people sense that. I think having this gift to recognize they're hurting, and here, I'm going to do this for you. Like, I think probably that also has been forged through the fire, forged through experiences and you knowing what that feels like, and this is how I'm going to help. And, if you've ever experienced some of these things, it's hard to make a decision when you're in the bottom of the pit to say, well, I don't even know what I need because I don't even know what's wrong with me. And I think that God has gifted you that in the way. And like you said, it's not wasted because you're not wasting it. You're sharing it with others. And even doing this, sharing your story with others to help people sometimes find that light out of that hole. And so I think that's something that God's using in your life for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely been times where, I don't even know what to pray, and that's when music has really come in. And there was a couple of songs that I listened to when I was going through the miscarriage and the loss and all of the job and all of this. And one of them is the So Will I. And I was so just at the bottom. And it was just sort of like, if the stars were made to worship, then so will I. I can't do anything else, but the stars were made to worship, and so will I. If the mountains bow before you, so will I. If the oceans roar your greatness, so will I. I can't do anything else, but if nature still praises you, then I will too.
Does this happen? Some of like songs at certain sections in your life, like it floods all those memories back. And there are certain songs that'll play for me, and I can remember distinctly 4 years ago. This one song I'm thinking of, I'm on my mind. I can remember I was actually crying in the shower because this song God was pressing it on my heart and my soul, and I remember just praying that whatever that song was, praying it back to God, and I remember it. So anytime it comes on the radio, that's what I kind of go back to. And then songs for the next trial and it's not always the same song during that. That's what's interesting, and so it'll take me right back to that moment. But I find it very powerful and helpful. And you're good at sharing those things with others. We talked a little bit about this, but just what would you say now when you feel depleted, when you feel unenergized or kind of heading in that lonely place? What would you say fills your cup physically and spiritually?
I mean, I think, physically, rest, eating a good meal, basic need things. Taking a walk, just being quiet. Music, of course, reading the scripture, and sometimes I don't even know where to look in the Bible. But I know I can always go to Psalms. Every human emotion that we're capable of is in the book of Psalms, and they're mostly sad ones. They're not all rejoiceful ones. And then spiritually, it's the verse that we have this hope as an anchor. That has always just rung true to my heart, is because I'm going to screw up. I'm going to make mistakes. People are going to make mistakes. I'm going to let people down. People are going to let me down, but nothing is wasted. God will redeem it if I just hold on to hope, which anchors me in Him. I mean, and that is just all there is to it. It doesn't have to be fancy and eloquent and pretty and butterflies. It's just a very simple, just hold on to Him. And if I just hold on to Him.
You referenced that verse and that thought that sometimes you just don't know how to pray. You don't even know what you're asking for, but you know that you need to pray. And sometimes it's just like an SOS, like help. I don't know what else to say. Just do what it is you do, because I don't even know how to fix this.
And the great thing is God is so capable of that.
Yeah. So just reach out to Him.
So capable.
And I'm so thankful. Thank you for coming.
Of course.
And sharing your story. And again, I think I said it in a couple of words, but this is just a conversation starter. Please let the conversations continue. If you're struggling with some of these things, Sarah is a great resource.
I'm a big advocate for mental health. So if you've ever been like, I think we need counseling, you just talk to me. We will talk. We will have a conversation about it. I love mental health. I love relying on my friends and seeing what God does behind closed doors. And
I love that's what we're doing here, is trying to build the body of Christ, to help each other up. We're not all going to fall at the same time, but we're all going to need each other's help. So that's what we're doing here. So thank you very much.
Thank you for
Join us next time on The Plastic Cup.